So after the excitement and wonder and novelty of new Lord of the Rings content right up in your eyeballs, get them in your eyeballs and earballs, I suppose, as well, new Lord of the Rings content, which I didn't even realise I was that excited about, because, the trailers were all like, meh. I actually got kind of excited. I got swept up in the magic of Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth, with orcs being all like, heh, and the elves being all like, ooh, la la la, I'm an elf, and, didn't like the Hobbits, but other things were exciting and wondrous, and I was kind of swept up in the magic, so I didn't hate the first 2 episodes. But now all of that magic and hype or whatever, it's kind of, disappeared, and we're just left with, what will the show be week to week? Now it's just, a show that I'm watching. And this week 2, episode 3, how does it stack up? How did I feel about it? Oh boy. So I was mistaken when I thought that we'd met kind of all our main cast for the first season in the first 2 episodes, because this episode doesn't feature a lot of them, or if they are there, they're kind of almost side characters thrown in right at the last minute. Mostly, we are featured in the land island of Numenor? You saw the episode, that place. And I was just suddenly hit with an overwhelming sense that I thought I had, a good understanding of Lord of the Rings lore. But then I kept being like, Aragorn of the Dunedain from Numenor? Potentially? Maybe? Or that's completely wrong. I don't know. So I just kept being like, it's the land of the Aragorns. It's the Aragorn land or something, maybe, but I don't know. Then I suddenly decided just to stop caring about any of that and just focus on the story and the rich tapestry of characters that we might see in this beautiful new rendered CGI universe. And we got PG angry tavern folk who are like, I don't like your kind around here. Cut. Oh, you've given me a couple of free drinks. I'm having a good time. Cut. You didn't think I'd notice, but I noticed you stole the thing. Let's have a punchy punch. And the guy's like, don't do this. Guys, don't do this. I'm like, what could possibly happen? Is he going to suddenly have some kind of superhuman strength and take on all of them like some kind of warrior ninja? Maybe he's more than meets the eye. Turns out he's the Aragorn of this series, which we find out a bit later. She's like, you've got the sigil. You're the Aragorn of this series. He's like, I'm not the Aragorn. I'm like, that's what Aragorn would say. He's all Strider at the start. So they're doing, Sauron might be back, but they're also doing, there's a king, but he doesn't want to be king, but maybe at the end he might be king. I hate when prequels, do the same thing, where it's all I want to see is, new, interesting, different content. I don't want to see, a legacy sequel. I guess it's a legacy prequel, where it's just it's remember Lord of the Rings? Well, we'll do it again, but now it's called Rings of Power, and you hate all the characters. Great. There were 2 moments that excited me with this whole Numenor. I will get that right next week. I promise. I won't, because I've suddenly realized I care so little about this show. But, they're doing a whole thingy at some point, talking and dialogue. There's a library, and she's like, take me to the library of knowledge and wonder, or whatever Galadriel says. And he's like, we'll ride there. And then she kind of cuts him off and goes, did you say ride there? And I'm like, oh boy, what are we going to get, some kind of magical griffin or a Pegasus or I don't know, something? Just horses though. So actually this was a positive, and then it turned into a negative. See, that's this kind of show. My favorite bits were things where I thought something was going to happen, but then they showed what happened and I went, oh, just riding a horse. She hasn't ridden a horse? Did she think she'd never see a horse again? Has Galadriel never ridden a horse? In Middle-earth? I don't understand why she was so in awe. They don't have cars. Everyone uses horses to traverse and travel everywhere. How else would you get there? I don't know. I expected some kind of great majestic beast. The other bit I really liked was when we see the city of Numenor and we see all the beautifully rendered CGI statues and everything, and it just looks gorgeous and amazing. It feels very expensive but shallow, the show itself, but seeing those shots still look great. But what I really loved is you see kind of what you think is kind of the wide shot of the city, you get close-ups this and that, then you get the wide, but then it goes BAM! And you give a even bigger, wider wide, and I'm like, whoa! That actually looks like a full-blown city. I even think back to Game of Thrones where they give the big shot of King's Landing, and I'm like, that's a big city. But not a big city. I still feel that doesn't fit the people you say it fits. Whereas this, I'm like, that's a big city. I like this big city. That might have been my favorite bit, and now I'm saying that out loud. That's a bad sign, right? That's a bad sign. So we meet some new sailors of Numenor. I'll get it right. I'll get it right at some point. I'm not going to Google it. I don't have time. The football starts very, very soon. I've got to get this review out. And oh my God, if we lose tonight, I am going to be sad forever. We focus on one sailor boy, and he's like, Father, I don't want to do the sailing thingy anymore. I'm 18. I want to take a gap year. I'm deferring. And the dad's like, no. You can't take a gap year to explore and, find yourself. You wanted to be a sailor. You be a sailor. And he's like, no, Dad, you don't understand me. And I'm captivated. I'm there. I'm in the world of Middle-earth, or Numenor. Across the shimmering sea. Or whatever the shuddering sea? The shining sea? It doesn't matter. I don't care. I know you care, fan of Tolkien. I'm sorry. I've never cared less. So before this captivating father and son dynamic that we're introduced to, we get one of what I would say the most iconic moments of the show so far, where we get potentially the worst lines so far, where we're introduced to the sailors, they stand there, and he's like, the sea is always right. And then they epically chant behind him, the sea is always right. Which, and this is the most polite way I can put this, is a poor man's Game of Thrones line, what is dead may never die, from the Greyjoys. A good group of sailors / seamen / pirates, men of the sea, men of the boat and the ship and the That line is so evocative and powerful, and just it makes your imagination go wild and all that stuff. What is dead may never die. The sea is always right, on the other hand, feels like a 6-year-old's version of that, and I feel like a lot of this show feels like a 6-year-old's version of what could be in this universe of Middle-earth and outside of Middle-earth, in the Tolkieniverse, It really just feels like very PG, and I don't want a tits and boobs and stabby stab blood gore, horrifying Game of Thrones levels of violence or, mature content, but I feel like this show is going so far the other way, where it's the only bits of violence and blood we get are CGI blood splatters onto the camera lens. Nothing takes me out of an action battle sequence more than CGI blood splattering onto the camera. It just makes no sense to me. It's it's meant to immerse you in the fight and the action or whatever, and make you go, ooh, the blood hits me? Is it meant to have hit me, the viewer? Is it just meant to show oh, it's so gory, there's blood dripping off the camera, but it doesn't even do a big extreme version. It's a little flick on the side, and it's meant to make you, I don't know, feel something, but it feels so put in post, they look at the fight and they go, oh, there's not enough dynamicness and, feeling to this action. Throw some CGI blood at the screen and they'll all go ooh, shock, scary, blood, it just kind of felt like that. And this is now the second time in 3 episodes that they've done this little blood splatter onto the screen, and it's okay, they did that in the first episode, and I was okay, that's alright, you can make a mistake. Everyone's made a mistake before in their life. So I forgave that mistake, and I didn't really think on it. I didn't really let it dwell in my mind as a negative. I just went, whatever, that was a creative choice, bad choice, but just a one-off thing. You can make a mistake. But now, 2 episodes later, they've done the exact same thing again, and now I'm starting to sense a pattern. So is every second episode during the action scenes, we're going to get a bit of CGI blood splatter on the camera, ruining the immersion. The very small immersion I had in these action scenes, because they're not very good. I don't even know what to say besides. They're just fine. It's just so standard to have the guy who's I'm just your everyman. And they're all oh, there's 6 of us and we're going to bloody punch you up, man. And he's guys, don't do this. And he just, is the best and whatever, because he's the Aragorn or whatever. And in theory, that scene always works for me. And I feel if a show's not working, the scene sucks. And if the show's working, I love that scene. I think that really shows where my mind is when I'm feeling and watching this show at this point. I'm just so just non-caring, and I just feel so oh, okay, yeah, we're doing this trope. The only thing about that scene that I found interesting in any, way, and this is really more of a nothing aside, because it's really just that they were we gotta quick get through the scene so the guards come. But my God, those guards appear out of nowhere. He's, the guy's just fallen on the ground, the last guy he's beaten up, and the guards are there, spears to the ready. Because that is efficiency. That is efficient guard / cop / police enforcement enforcing. It's wondrous. It's really amazing. They should get a raise. So back on Middle-earth with the charisma vacuum that is elf cop guard guy. He's alone now. He's been captured. He's no longer elf cop character. He's elf slave character. And all the other elves are there and they're remember us from episode 1? I'm I don't, but I'm picking up from context clues that he remembers you. So you must be those people that he talked up on the big watch guard tower. You must be those. But I've already forgotten your faces because I suddenly realized as I started watching this, it's just not that memorable. There's no kind of fascinating, interesting characters. Everyone just kind of is like there. And I think that's something where like in the second episode, there's an orc and he comes into the house. He's like, I'm an orc. And I was just overwhelmed by how good the orc looked. In this episode, we've got a whole bunch of orcs being all, orc, slavers or whatever. And they're making the elves dig a hole and then cut a big tree down. And they look, technically very, very amazing. But there was something to do with their delivery, their performance, their whole just like vibe that just didn't work for me. Like straight off the bat, there's one with like a cloak hiding from the sun. And that whole situation, I really love the idea of that, where like the sun is their enemy and they can't, like they're like a vampire or whatever. So they're wearing all these cloaks and stuff. But he was like, got hit by the sun a bit and went, and like put the cloak over and like scampered off. And suddenly I'm just like, oh, just the vibe of this just feels off. It's like, when you're watching something, you're like, I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't formalize or like, figure out exactly what's not working. But it's all just a bit off. It gets a little bit better. We start getting some action set pieces and scenes and, it builds up some drama. He's like, drink the water. And I'm like, is this going to be a classic Merry and Pippin callback where he drinks the water? But actually, no, it's evil Uruk-hai ale or whatever it was. Something like that. Is it that? Is it poison? What's it going to be? No, it's a misdirect while he just slices one of their throats. Very PG once again. It doesn't have to be gory, but it just felt a bit kind of like, oh, the character that I forgot was in the episode before, he's back, but he's dead. I don't really care. That being said though, older man elf. And when the old man's running off and you're like, he's gonna get help. Bring back the army of elves. And then he stops and you're like, what's going on? Are the elves already here? And he turns around and he's being shot. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of awesome. Then another couple of arrows hit him. And like, that was kind of horrifying. Because it's like, oh shit, I thought they'd got out of this. Like, that's pretty good. But that little glimmer of hope and, cool moments and scene and stuff, it's like a little bit too late because we've already just had a whole sequence where they're like, cut down the trees. Like, we'll go around the trees. Like, cut down the tree. Rah. And it's just like, I don't know. Like, cuts were big wide at one point. And I'm like, I remember this $1 billion show looking so gorgeous and amazing. But now we got this big wide and the trees there and he's cutting it down and just... everything just feels a bit like fake and clean, and that big wide of the tree he's cutting it down just felt very Hobbity. Speaking of Hobbity, I never thought that I would think something in the Hobbit films, which are so CGI heavy. Like, I have a soft spot for them, especially the first one. But, like, the wargs in that compared to the Lord of the Rings kind of just look so different in CGI and so modern. I don't know, like, I accept that now, but I was like, oh, okay, a warg's coming. Release the warg. What does $1 billion Amazon, warg look like? What does Jeff Bezos' wargs look like? Horrendous. Horrible. It looks like the hyena from bloody Lion King, but, like, just, like, googly eyes, and he's like, rah, rah, rah. And, like, in theory, that's cool, but just the visual design of it just looks horrible. Like, just so bad. I don't know, maybe I just like shut off so much of this episode and I suddenly went, oh, I don't like this show at all. Like, nothing's capturing my imagination. Everything's so boring. I hate all these characters. So the things that are going to get me in are big monsters, like that big sea beast in episode 2 fighting Galadriel. That was so cool. It looked so cool. It looked so interesting. The way it was framed was really nice. This warg just looks so bad. And it's like, oh, if nothing else, I want to be here for the fantastic special effects budget and VFX budget and all the things budget to give me some big wild monster battle fight sequence-y things, because I live for that stuff. But if it's going to look like that, oh god. So no Elrond this episode? Boo. No dwarves this episode? Boo. I vaguely liked some of their stuff, but did I? I don't even know. But we got back to the Hobbits. Hobbits and, young sexy Gandalf that's probably, not Gandalf and is definitely not young or sexy. But, I'm going to refer to him until we get a name for him as young sexy Gandalf. So young sexy Gandalf is all like, burning pages of something or other to do with the stars or something, and then he gets tripped up in a thing, and then all the hobbits are like, oh no, a big wizard, and then they're fine with him, but then they're not fine with him, but then he helps them push a cart, because then, the dad of the main girl hobbit, whose name eludes me, I don't know her name, and I really don't care. Female Frodo, she's like, it's destiny, it's destiny, sure, oh boy, I don't really like this whole destiny angle. But also, I did like one line later where Galadriel's like, oh, humans, they call it destiny and fate, but it's actually an otherworldly thing that they can't even comprehend in their minds! I love that. That was probably the best part of the episode. I'm like, I like how the elves see it as like this actual force that's actually, putting her together with like this show's Aragorn. But like, men would just be like, it's just the fate of the gods. She's like, no, it's literally a god. Or so. I don't know what she thinks it is, but I just like that kind of, contrast of different ideologies, I guess. I don't even know what I'd call it. But I really like that line. Back to the Hobbits. The cart can't be pushed because Dad's broke his leg. But then big old, sexy old young Gandalf's like, I can help. So he helps. Also, they've got like costumes and like hiding like, you know, they've got fur and grass and stuff to like go through the grass because they're like small. But then like there's a shot right at the end where they go like out of that grass. It's like, but they've just got that like camouflage for that area. So they just have like camouflage as they keep just like switching over. I don't know. At first I'm like, hey, is that awesome? I'm so negative at this point. I can't even tell if something's good because I'm like, oh, is something awful going to happen? Oh. But then I was like, yeah, they walk out and I'm like, that camouflage is only going to work for a certain type of grass. I guess they just keep switching the camouflages. But that is a nitpick. I think the big detrimental thing for me, if you've somehow got through all this rambling nonsense, is the characters. I just don't care. The story feels very like, I don't even really know where we're going with any of this. It feels so kind of like trying to be whimsical, trying to kind of, you know, all these disparate threads. Ooh, Sauron's brewing everywhere and there's all going to build up to something. But I want to see characters I care about go through the motions, go through the things. Like Lord of the Rings is like a big epic, like, you know, hero's journey arc. Like it's like a Star Wars or this. It's like there's so many stories that are like just so like the same. But it's the characters that get you through. Like you want to follow these characters on this journey and you could sit and watch them watch paint dry and you'd be happy. Whereas this is just like, I don't want to see them do the exciting things, yet alone watch them watch paint dry. So, yeah, a bit of a, yeah, I'm surprised by how negative this review is, but I don't think I even realized how much I didn't like the episode. Because I was just mostly bored. I was like, I don't think I can even have anything to say. But then, you know, the words came out. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I would love to know what everyone thought of episode 3 of Rings of Power.